All right, so here we are talking about nano-allocations today. Next slide, please, for IPv6. The history of this proposal, most of which all occurred this year. The original proposal was in February. It's gone through a couple revisions as noted on the slide and was recommended by the Advisory Council initially on July the 21st. Next slide, please. So the staff and legal review for this is fairly clean. The suggestion at the bottom was adopted by the Shepherds, so we fixed the one issue that was noted in the initial staff review. Next slide, please. The legal review creates no material issues, and the resource impact would be small, only a 3-month after a ratification by the board, and just the update of the standard training guidelines and documentation. Next slide, please. All right, so let's take a look at the problem statement for this. What is this policy proposal all about? So basically, this is about fees, and since policy cannot deal with fees, we're adding policy to change the way that people can get certain allocations. So the issue is with a 3x small ISP, one who only has a /24 in IPv4 addressing, who obtains the smallest IPv6 allocation today, which would be a /36, their fees would increase from $250 to $500 a year. And as you might imagine, this is a disincentive for some organizations who just don't want their fees to go up. Since the start of 2019, there was 29 organizations that requested and at this point have abandoned or withdrawn their requests, and 4 are still pending. So this is a issue that affects the smallest ISPs, and there's 2 to 3 dozen of these at least at this point have tried and decided that maybe I don't want to do this and raise my fees. So next slide, please. So here's the fee categories as they are currently. You'll note that the /40 is the bar for a 3x small, and the current policy only allows a /36 as the smallest ISP block. So what we are doing is creating a new category that allows for /40 IPv6 blocks. Next slide, please. So here's the text that we will be modifying. The new text is in red. So we add the ability to add a /40, and we have some specific unique requirements around the 40 that we designed so that this encourages IPv6 adoption, but also doesn't suggest to people that they should be getting smaller blocks just for dollars perspective. So it really is intended to limit it to those very smallest ISPs who only have very small IPv4 holdings today. And the second slide, the text, please. And this is the restrictions on partial returns, and also about how you cannot expand your block. You can only go one way. You can go larger, you can't go smaller. And that's also intended to be kind of this one-time carve out. If you're super small, you can get this super small nano IPv6 block, but if you grow, then you have to grow only in the larger direction. So next slide, please. So the changes since our meeting back in June, we added text to clarify partial returns so that there was no confusion about that. Only full returns would take someone off of the category, out of the category, and a partial return wouldn't be permitted. Next slide, please. So the questions we have for you today are, do you support the recommended draft as written? And are there any issues that you still think need to be addressed in this policy before that we would normally send this to last call, assuming that the community widely supports this policy? So thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for that presentation. So we will throw open the mics to questions and comments. Let's go a slide back, actually, since it's just better to have the the questions there. Thank you. Okay, we have our first question. So let's go to that, the Q&A first.
All right, our first question comes from David Farmer, University of Minnesota. I support this policy as written. Further, I believe this is an important policy to remove a small barrier to the adoption to IPv6.
Okay. Oh, there it is. Okay. And the next one, please.
All right, we have Lee Howard, IPv4 Global by Hilco Streambank. I see that 33 3x ISPs have applied. 33 times 250 is 8,250. How many 3x ISPs are there in total?
Does Andrew or John want to address the question?
I don't know the answer to that. So that
John Sweeting.
Well, I'll get the information momentarily. Last time I checked, there was approximately 1,100 3x ISPs, but I'll double check. 1175 is my offhand recollection. But give me
if you could pop up, John, when you have the number, and we'll put that into the record. Thank you for that. Okay, let's go to a microphone. Chris Tassett has his hand raised. Let's go to Chris.
All right, Chris, I am giving you the ability to speak.
Thank you. Chris Tassett, Tassett Law, ARIN-AC. I support this policy as written. I think it's really important to remove any impediments to IPv6 adoption. At the same time, I would encourage, as a separate matter, for the board to consider whether or not there should be some sort of modification to the fee schedule, because I am concerned about tailoring policy to fee schedules as an approach generally. What we're really trying to do is indirectly affect what people are paying. If from a routing efficiency or allocation efficiency perspective, it makes more sense to allocate /32s or /36s, I'd like in the long term to see us revert to that rather than creating an exception solely for the purpose of having people save fees. Thank you.
I think the board position has always been that yes, creating policies to impact fees is in fact to the point of that fees should not be part of the policy discussion. And our answer is that after any policy, or really at any time, we have to sometimes adjust the fee schedule to ensure that the principles by which we set fees are being met, and that the organization is in a healthy state. So that's always something we have to examine at the end of that, but we always enjoy and take community feedback on that. John, did you want anything to that?
Nope. I think you got it. I think you got it right on.
Okay, and I'm told now the mic is better, so I thank you all for your patience. Okay, I'm gonna go out of order, but go to Rob Seastrom, because just the timing of his hand popping up sounds like he might want to address something Chris Tassett said. See if my sensory is correct.
Robert, you've been given the ability to speak.
Thank you. Rob Seastrom, Capital One, ARIN-AC, and the original author of this proposal. And should probably go without saying that I support it, although if it had changed to something I didn't support, I would mention that. I'd like to speak specifically to Chris's comment about, or question about address space. ARIN's policy operationally has long been that if an organization gets smaller than a /32, it is carved out of a /32, and that space is set aside due to the sparse allocation process that we have for IPv6. And it's clear in the text there that this is going to be no different, that it would be /40 carved out of a /32, so that as they grew, there would be no deleterious effect on the routing table. From a technical soundness perspective, this works. We should go on to discuss what the community likes in terms of the fairness and fee schedule and whether it's appropriate, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. John Kern notes that there are 411 3X registration service plan customers. He's put that in the chat, but just to put that on the record. Actually, I see, John, your hand is up now. Did you have something else you wanted to raise, or did I beat you to it?
I just want to say my recollection of 1150 was the 2X category. That's why I thought there was so many, but 3X is relatively small.
Okay. All right, let's go to the questions. I'll do the next one and ask for my assistance. So first we have Owen DeLong of Farsight Security and the ARIN-AC. While I would prefer that the board address this through modification of the fee schedule so that a policy would be unnecessary, I think the proposal has been carefully crafted to minimize the long-term negative impacts of undersized IPv6 allocations. I support the policy as written unless or until the board addresses the fee problem more directly. Thank you, Owen. And I think I just refer to the earlier comments since you asked the board. Staff, next question, please.
All right, we have Gary Geeson with Central Logic. What would be the impact to revenue of addressing this problem through fee changes instead? I'm a bit leery about sacrificing one of the main goals of IPv6, aggregatability, for the sake of a few dollars. I would rather lower fees instead. I understand this cannot be done through policy to address the barrier to adoption.
I don't know if we can, you can do, I think the math is kind of there. So you could do it quite quickly. I don't actually have it off the top of my head and I don't want to guess, but I'm sure somebody is going to be faster than that. I think it's safe to say, yes, Gary, it's not a massive amount of money, but we also have to balance the fact that there is a certain amount of work that goes into any assignment or allocation that we do and maintain the services that we all enjoy as a community. So that has been obviously a factor. John?
Yeah, the amount of money is
$102,750 per year.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lee Howard.
It's a small amount compared to ARIN's overall budget. There's a fairness question because the amount of work involved, quite frankly, for organizations is not such that it drops significantly lower. In fact, smaller organizations tend to actually require a significant base of maintenance. So there's a concern of just an equity question, but the proposal to reduce the fee, just that category, not the whole schedule, but reduce the fee for that category has been put before the board. We have a number of fee issues that are on the schedule to look at. We also have the fact that we have ISPs and end users paying in two very different ways that has been raised as an issue of equity. So it's before the board. They've referred it to the FinCom. Staff is coming up with proposals for them to look at. It's going to be an active topic next year.
Thanks for that, John. Rob Seastrom, do you still have your hand up? I assume it would have been taken down. So if Rob, you have the floor.
And my apologies. I went ahead and discussed, mentioned my comment to Gary in the chat window. So no further.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's. I'd ask if you want to speak on this issue. We have a few more minutes before the break, so but I'd just like to be able to manage queue expectations. So please either raise your hand or ask your question. Let's go to our next question.
All right, Brian Jones from Virginia Tech. He supports this draft policy as written and supports moving IPv6 adoption forward.
Thank you, Brian. Next question is from Leo Vagoda and Polis LLC. I agree with Chris Tassett that using policy to address fee issues is not ideal. That said, the changes to the proposal since the last meeting have made it acceptable. I support its current form. Thank you, Leo. Next question or comment?
All right, Kevin Bloomberg, The Wire. I would far rather see this as a fee waiver than a policy. IPv4 and IPv6 subnet sizes are not equivalent and can't be. If an org uses 256/48s, then they would look equivalent to 256 IPv4s over 32s. However, that same organization could have a /24 of IPv4 and give out 16 million /64s. This policy erases years of good stewardship on appropriate sizing of IPv6 allocations from the community.
Thank you, Kevin, for that. Next question, please.
All right, Celeste Anderson with Pacific Wave. What are other RIRs doing with similar allocations? Are they allocating smaller IPv6 blocks?
I don't know if staff can comment on policies and other, or if Andrew, you're aware from this process. I wouldn't want to comment off the cuff.
Yeah, we would need to research that. It's documented in the comparative policy matrix on the NRO website. I'll dig into it and come back.
Thank you for that. Okay, last call for questions or comments. Let's go to the floor. Chris Woodfield has the floor, please.
All right, Chris, you have the permission to talk.
Hello. Hi. Chris Woodfield, Twitter, ARIN-AC. I'm aware that IPv6 allocations, as practiced today, are allocated via sparse addressing principles, which means that in almost every case, when someone receives an IPv4 allocation, the space adjacent to that allocation up to a certain number of bits is at least unofficially reserved for any expansion that customer may that member may have, and with the intent of if that customer member comes back and requests more v6 space, that can be accomplished simply by moving back the mask on their existing allocation instead of allocating a separate block. In the case of these /40 micro allocations, do you anticipate having the ability to do the same, where a member who receives a /40 allocation and then comes back and fills that block, requests a 36, will be able to receive that 36 sparsely, such that they don't need a new block. They can just use the same block, but with a shorter mask.
Okay. John Kern.
Yeah, I just want to say that it's unclear that parties using smaller allocations will suffer any deaggregation as a result. If they expand with time, they will get adjacent space, which is set aside with sparse allocation that we use. So I just want to point that out. I guess the point of the concern that some people have about issuing smaller blocks to parties for IPv6 is it creates a pressure for them to potentially do smaller allocations to their customers. And while ARIN doesn't set customer allocation size, the larger blocks we issue, the more it encourages larger blocks to be issued to the end users.
Okay. Thank you for that, John. I'm going to close the queues at the end of the next question interaction, so please either raise your hand or type your question. So let's take the next question, please.
We actually do not have any further questions in the Q&A.
Oh, I think my thing is out of date then. I'm sorry, I showed two, but as you say that, I see that they have been previously answered, so sorry. The Zoom client is malfunctioning on me. It does not seem to be my day for this. Could we then go to David Farmer, and after David Farmer, we will be closing the queue. So please go ahead, David.
All right, David, you are free to talk.
My comment is David Farmer, University of Minnesota. My comment is to Celeste's question about the other RIRs. Our fee schedule is significantly different than the other RIRs in the impact that the V6 block sizes have, at least in my opinion. And so there isn't an apples to apples comparison to be made, but our fee schedule creates a much larger impact, at least relative size wise. And so that's my opinion on it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. So with that, I see our queues are cleared, so we will now close them. We have a few minutes before a break, so this will be our last RDP proposal for the break, but we will now have our last poll. So I would ask if everyone is ready that we bring up the poll on 2020-3 IPv6 Nano-Allocations. I'd ask that you vote either in favor or against on the poll. And if you are unable to, please use the Q&A. So let's go ahead, please, and bring that up. And we'll give 30 seconds for everyone to. Another 10 seconds, last call. Again, if you can't see the poll, please do for or against in the Q&A. All right, we'll now close the voting, and I'll ask for the results from staff when available. So.
All right, at the close of the poll, there were 124 participants, 42 in favor and 12 against.
Thank you. That information will be provided to the Advisory Council for their feedback.